Looking at data analysis. So we're going to start by looking at data and frequency. So we're going to focus on data that isn't grouped in any way to begin with. So a set of data is a list of numbers which we refer to as scores. The frequency of the score is the amount of times that it appears in the set of data. Our cumulative frequency of a score is the sum of the frequencies for all the scores less than or equal to that score. To complete the cumulative frequency, you add the frequency of the current score to the previous cumulative frequency. We now also have an additional column when we look at our frequency table, which is fx. This represents our frequency multiplied by our score. So what that looks like, so here we have our frequency table. So we have our scores and we have the frequency of those scores. So we add up all of these frequencies, that gives us a total number of scores of 23. We then do our cumulative frequency. So we add this, so our first one is just 3, and then we add 3 to 2, which gives us 5, then 9, 17, 23. So the bottom of our frequency column and the bottom of our cumulative frequency column should be the same number. Now for this column over here, our f of x column, what we're going to do is we're going to do our score over here multiplied by our frequency. So our first one's going to be 3 times 4, which gives us 12, then 10, 6 times 4 is 24, 7 times 8, 56, 8 times 6, 48. Now to get this f of x here, so what this sigma sign here is, this symbol means sum of. So what you need to do is you need to add the total over here to provide us with the total for that column, which is 150. Now, when we're talking about the mean of a data set, this is what we refer to as the arithmetic average of a data set. So this is the one where we need to perform a calculation to be able to solve it. Now we write it as x bar, so this little x here with the line on top of it, and we pronounce it x bar. So we calculate it by x bar equals the sum of our scores divided by the number of our scores. So when we looked back at our frequency table, that's the sum of f of x divided by the sum of f, where f is our frequency and f of x is our sum of our scores. So from the previous frequency table, we want to determine the mean of our data. So if we look at our table, so we want our f of x and we want our sum of f. So we're looking at the total in our frequency column and the total of the f of x column over here. So that will give us 150 divided by 23, which will give us our arithmetic mean as 6.52 if we round that to 2 decimal places. Now, when we look at measures of central tendency, we also have the median. So the median of a data set is the middle value when the numbers are ordered from lowest to highest. If we have an odd number, then the median is the middle number. If there is an even number of scores, the median is the average of the 2 middle scores. So if we have an odd number, we can find the position or the number of the score that we're looking for by finding our number plus 1 divided by 2. If it's an even number, then we need to take the average of the 2 scores found in position n divided by 2 and n divided by 2 plus 1. So remember, our n here is the number of scores. So this doesn't tell us what the actual score is. This tells us the position of the score that we are looking for. So the mode is the score that has the highest frequency. So this is the score that appears the most often in the data set. Data sets can have no modes. It can have multiple modes. It's just however many scores have the highest frequency in that data set. So to find the mode from a frequency table, we need to identify the score with the highest frequency. So if we look over here, we want to find the median of the data and we want to find the mode in our data. So again, to find our median, we have an odd number of data here. So we're going to do 23 plus 1 divided by 2. That's going to give us position 12. Now, when we're looking at these positions over here, so our frequency tells us our position. So this is saying that our first, second, and third score fall within this one. Our fourth and fifth score are in here. Our sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth score are in here, so on and so forth. So if we are looking for the 12th score, that will be in this one here, because this one here ends at the 9th score. So this one would start at our 10th score. So our 12th score would be in this one here. So the median score, 7 here. We want to find the mode of our data set. So to find our mode, we're looking at the frequency column. And our frequency that appears the highest here is this number 8, which refers to number 7. So the score with the highest frequency was number 7. Now, just a bit of a review on our histograms and our polygons. A histogram is a column graph of all the scores in a data set, and the polygon is the line joining the frequencies. So remember, we have this half column at the beginning and at the end. Our polygon is starting down here from the middle of that half column, and it's ending down here at the end of that half column. It's going to the middle of each of our columns, and that's where our polygon sits. Our cumulative frequency, remember, this is like going upstairs because we're adding each time to it. Again, we have our half column at the beginning and the end, but this time our polygon is starting from the bottom of the first column, and it's going to the top right in each of our columns, and it ends at the top right. And again, our histogram is moving up in steps. So some important rules: we must have a title. We must label our x-axis and our y-axis. So our x is usually referring to the score, and our y refers to the frequency or cumulative frequency, depending on the graph that you're creating. You need to consider the scale on the y-axis carefully to ensure that all your points fit nicely onto your graph. And when we are drawing our polygon, if it's a frequency polygon, it goes through the center of the columns. And if we're drawing the cumulative frequency polygon, it goes through the top right-hand corner of the columns. So reading a histogram and a polygon. So consider this cumulative frequency histogram. What is the total amount of scores in this data set? So to work that out, remember, this is cumulative frequency. So what it's saying is we've added our frequencies together. So the top of our very last column is going to tell us how many scores we had in total. So for this one here, it's roughly around 58. We can also use the ogive to determine the position of a specific score. We want to know what the score is in the 25th position in our ordered set of data. So here's our 25. We go across to the ogive and we go straight down, and that tells us that the score in the 25th position of our ordered data set would be 8. Now, if we wanted to complete this frequency table, how we do it, we start by adding up all of our frequencies, which gives us a total of 36. Then we want to find our cumulative frequency, which is 5, 5 plus 7, 12, 12 plus 11, 23, etc., until at the end, both of these columns give us the same solution. We then want to find our f of x, so we're looking at the first two columns to work that one out. So we've got 5 times 20, etc., until we get to the end there. Now, to find out sum of our f of x, we want to add all those scores together, which gives us 792. Okay, so this is looking at our frequency table from the previous page. We want to calculate our mean. So we have our formula of f of x divided by, the sum of f of x divided by our total number of scores. We'll have 792 divided by 36, which will give us 22. We then want to determine the median. So we have an even number of scores, so we need to look at the scores in the position of n over 2 and n over 2 plus 1. So we're looking for the scores in the position of 36 divided by 2 and 36 divided by 2 plus 1. So it's our 18th and our 19th score. Now remember, when we're looking at our cumulative frequency, this is saying that we've got the first 5 scores here, then 5 to 12 in this column, then 13 to 23 here. So this would be where our median is sitting. It's sitting in this part here, the scores between 13 and 23. So our median will be 22. Our mode, we're looking at our frequency column and we're trying to find the frequency that is the highest, which is this 11. So our mode is 22. Now, if we wanted to draw the frequency histogram and polygon, we'd start by labeling our axes, so score and frequency. Then we would be focusing on, because we're not doing a cumulative frequency histogram, we're just doing a plain frequency histogram. We're just looking at these two columns here. So we're going to write in our scores, so 20 to 24, and then we're going to draw in our axes on our vertical and numbers on our vertical axis. So we needed to have a maximum of 11. So evenly spacing those out, I've just spaced them out in lots of, each line is representative of one. So our data isn't too squished together and it's not too spread out. Okay, now I enter in my columns in regards to this. So my first column will be 5, then 7, 11, 9, and 4. Once I finish that, I then want to draw my polygon. So to draw my polygon, we're doing a frequency polygon. So it's going to start in the bottom left-hand corner here, and it's going to join the center of each of our columns together. And there is our polygon. Now, if I wanted to draw the cumulative frequency histogram and polygon, so again, my score, this time I'm labeling my vertical axis as cumulative frequency. And we are now looking at this score column and this frequency column. So now I'm looking at, I need to have a total of 36. So I'm going to need to change my scale on my vertical axis. My horizontal axis will remain the same, but my vertical axis will now change, and I'm now going to go up in 5s. So I can make sure I can fit all my data evenly onto my histogram. Now I'm going to draw in my columns. So again, it's a cumulative frequency histogram, so we're going to be stepping up each time. So each column is going to be taller than the previous one. As we're drawing a cumulative frequency polygon, we're now going to start at the bottom left-hand side of our first column, and we're going to join the top right-hand side of each of our columns together. And that is our cumulative frequency histogram and polygon for that set of data.